It's not about the boat. It's not about drug dealing. If you don't like another country, if you don't like socialism, what's the American translation of socialism? Drug dealing, terrorism. They're accused of that. Again, the one thing that the United States cannot talk about as it's forced to neo-colonial imperialism, conquer Venezuela, conquer Greenland, just as England and France and Germany conquered part of Africa. All of a sudden, we're put back in history, 150 years after this. Well, what they cannot talk about, to get back to the SCO and BRICS meetings, is that what the BRICS are doing, what China has done, is in creating a mixed economy. Let's call it a socialized market economy. This was the original dynamic of industrial capitalism, seeking to rationalize production, minimize waste, minimize unnecessary costs imposed by rent extracting classes, the landlords, the monopolists, the banks that did not play a productive role in financing industry. The problem is that America and Europe no longer follow this original 19th century logic of industrial capitalism. They're willing to blow up the world if they can't control it and dominate other countries. That's what's an issue in this Venezuelan boat attack. That was it was shown again and again on network television, the blowing up of the boat. Maybe the title of this show should be Late Stage Barbarism. That term is being used throughout much of the internet, including guests on your show, Nima, such as Alistair Crook and others. It's late stage barbarism and the willingness to attack other countries that the United States and NATO cannot control. That is a setting for what Asia, the BRICS, and the other countries are following to say, let's look at where the US economy and the European economies went wrong. How do we avoid it among themselves? How do we create trade among ourselves and investment among ourselves and monetary relations about ourselves that are not going to lead to the kind of financialization that have destroyed the Western economies as they've taken a long detour away from industrial capitalism towards finance capitalism and financial polarization and polarizing the economies between creditors and debtors and imposing a whole overhead of debt service, of land rent, of increasing monopolies. That's the Western model. And what the BRICS are discussing is how do we avoid all this? And they're reinventing the wheel that Britain and Germany and France and the United States developed in their industrial takeoffs in the early 19th century. Well, that's what can't be discussed. So instead of spelling it out by saying, well, we're no longer in industrial capitalist countries, we're deindustrializing. And so the only way that we can control other countries is to grab them by military force, whether it's Venezuelan oil or Greenland or Ukraine's rare earths. They just call them, well, they're drug dealers, they're belligerent, they're evil. And this demonization of other countries, as if countries that you can't control are drug dealers, are ethnically inferior if they're Slavic and you're a Ukrainian, if they're Hispanic and you're an American government Republican. All of this demonization is to avoid talking about what this world split that we're seeing taking shape in the last week is really all about.
I wanted to add, because there's an ongoing debate which begins by recognizing, correctly in my view, that there are also huge differences among the members of the BRICS. That is correct. These are very different countries, different histories, different economic systems, different cultures. It is a very complicated, heterogeneous mass, number one. It is right now being thrown together by a common enemy. And what is not recognized here in the United States is that the United States is that enemy. That's why you have this apparently perverse result that the United States wants to do everything to dismiss and to deny the BRICS, and then is confronted by the fact that it is the single most important bringer together of this heterogeneous. It's important also to recognize that as the world is changing, the way we think about the world economy has to also change now. The 20th century set up the issue as if it were a great historical struggle between the capitalist system and the socialist system, US, USSR, etc. Those issues raised by the capitalism versus social, those are still on the table. Those have not been resolved. Not in the West, not in the East either. They will play their role. Right now, they are secondary because the key issue motivating world actors and affairs is this break between the dominance of the West and the rise of the East, the decline of the G7, the rise of the BRICS. And it is perfectly appropriate for us to think about that dynamic, not because it displaces or somehow renders no longer relevant the capitalism, socialism struggle. That struggle is there, it's right below the surface, and it will come to the surface. It does already now, but it will continue in one country or another, in one region or another, in one group of striking workers at a factory in fill in any blank of any country now in the BRICS. They haven't overcome those contradictions. Some of their enthusiasts may say so, but that's naive. You know, the people who made the transition from feudalism to capitalism, for example, in France, Robespierre, Danton, all of them, they love to talk about liberty, equality, fraternity, and the struggle of people. They believed if you bring in capitalism, you will get liberty, equality, fraternity, and add the American Revolution contribution, democracy. Well, the 19th century taught people that you got the capitalism, you did. You buried feudalism, you did. But did you get liberty, equality, fraternity, and democracy? Not at all. And who made that point more powerfully in the 19th century than everybody else? Karl Marx. That's his contribution. He loved liberty, equality, fraternity, democracy, the French and American revolutions. He said so over and over again. But he said capitalism is its own obstacle to getting that done. And that was his other great contribution. It's not external, it's internal. Well, we have every right to say, and I would argue, that the BRICS is an immensely important break in Western capitalism, challenging all the people who led it, or as Michael says, challenging the whole logic and ideology of capitalism in the 19th century and the 20th. So it's, beyond words important, but it doesn't remove or erase or leave behind those other issues, it just teaches us that while we may have thought the issue in the 20th century was capitalism versus socialism, a lot of other things were going on, and those have now come to the fore, pushed away, pushed into second place, those other issues, but they're not resolved. They will show us in the future that those issues remain on the table, and they will be doing that in China and everywhere else as well.
Well, Richard, you're quite right in emphasizing the. I'm blacking out. In emphasizing what the break was. The BRICS have a variety of social political systems, and they're very heavy neoliberal forces within the BRICS. How do they deal with that? Well, I think the key to these meetings is not, although nominally they're geopolitical meetings that we've been seeing in China, the whole meetings were built around this military anniversary of the ending of World War II. It was placed in a military perspective in order to highlight just how important today's fight is in shaping the next 80 years. Because the promise, just like the promise of industrial capitalism to bring about more equality and raise living standards, ended up taking the detour into monopoly capitalism and finance capitalism. The United Nations agreements and the whole economic order that was devised in 1944 and 1945 that created the UN and the IMF and the World Bank has not lived up to its promise at all. And I think President Xi's speech proclaimed at this meeting that the aim was, quote, a global government initiative. He's talking about how do we make global governments that can be agreed upon in the face of these neoliberal strength in some countries, in the face of the surviving post-industrial rent-seeking interests in many of the BRICS countries and many of the global South countries. How do we deal with it? All that they could deal with, that they set out to do, was let's make a set of foundational assumptions for international trade, non-interference was one of them. Equality among different countries, not threatening each other's national security. Equal economic sovereignty among nations was really what it was all about. Well, how can you have economic sovereignty for the global South countries, for instance, when they have the modern equivalent of what Britain and Europe had, the survival of feudalism, the survival of a landlord class, land rent, a survival of monopolists. Well, what the global South countries have as their legacy that's just as serious as feudalism is the legacy of foreign ownership of their raw materials, resources. What Europe, England, Germany, France, what they sought in Africa was not to replicate themselves, not to spread the industrial capitalism that marked the industrial takeoff of Europe, but they sought rent-seeking. They sought to create their own sort of rentier economy, very much as much of a straitjacket as feudalism was. They wanted control. They wanted resource rents for oil, for mining, for monopolies in transportation, such as the European investment in canals and railroads and other basic infrastructure. From the very beginning, European and then American investment in the global South took a completely different form than investment in continental Europe and the United States itself. It was all rent-seeking. Well, this is the legacy that the BRICS countries have to deal with, because this legacy has created client oligarchies in many of the southern countries. Well, this was a problem that they were worrying about until last week about India. Where does India's sort of mixed economy and mixed geopolitical identity lie? Well, they were able to solve that. They're going to have to solve this problem that you point out of different economic systems throughout the BRICS and global South countries. The only way that they can make a beginning in this is to say what we can agree upon is de-dollarization, using each other's currencies, not the dollar, creating a China is going to create be the major investor in an international bank and create trade relations. That has to be the beginning. How they deal with each other before they can deal now. How do we deal with your domestic economies so that you other countries can follow the same path that China has done in keeping the financial sector as a public utility to create money and credit for purposes of capital investment and productive lending instead of predatory corporate takeovers and financial leveraging and debt pyramiding that you have in the United States. This is what they're trying to do. I think the focus is on international geopolitical relations before they can then go into the domestic relations. And as they work out this geopolitical discussion of, well, how are we going to arrange for the means of payment? What is a productive loan? The structuring of foreign trade and investment has its own momentum in transforming these internal economies to free themselves from the Western neoliberal sort of rent-seeking, financialized, predatory economy that you have here.
Richard, just to add something to what Michael said, that over the last 3 years, the United States dollar has lost about 107% of its value relative to gold. And this is, I think, the main point that Russia and China and other countries are trying to build on their economy. The main goal is to build on the value of gold. And go ahead, Richard. You wanted to add?
Yeah, I also personally am running out of time, but I just want to add one little point. I think we're going to see what Michael has just alluded to. We're going to see, and the whole world will see, how exactly China and the BRICS are going to handle the economic issues that the whole world confronts differently. They're going to see it step by step, whether it's in the attention paid to the climate. How much of your economic development is going to be shaped by taking seriously the climate issues versus not doing that? It's already evident. How much of your work is going to be taken in making sure that the inequality of wealth and income stops increasing and starts tangentially, decreasing, taking deliberate steps? And there is some evidence. And the last one that I think is the one that may do the trick is how you're going to integrate artificial intelligence. In the West, it is a threat to employment. And the reason for that is that capitalists use AI, if they use it at all, if they install it, because they can fire workers and replace them with AI. If you have 100 workers doing a task and AI enables them all to do a bit more, you can fire 50 of them and they can get as much done as the remaining, as they used to take 104. Okay? And you'll see that. And that's why there's the alarmism and the anxiety about the employment. But of course, there's an option. If the AI makes you doubly productive, as in my example, the alternative is that everybody keeps their job but works 4 hours a day, not 8. Then you get the same output, all the same numbers, the same profit. It's all the same, but the AI has been used to enhance the leisure of the majority, the working class. Okay, those are the two poles. Fire half the workers, or keep them all and give them a half-time job, paying them the same, because all the numbers work out, the profits the same, output's the same, revenue's the same, wages the same. Half the work, same wages. Workers would love it. Well, those are the two poles. You can do anything in between. That's going to be a decision that more and more countries are likely going to make. And it's going to separate those who are in general serious about the old socialist objectives and those who are not. And that's going to become an issue of contention inside every economy. That's what I mean by saying we haven't left the world of capitalism versus socialism. We're actually closer to making that a real struggle on the ground every day than we were. We just didn't understand it. We thought the struggle was X. It's actually Y. That's how I think we should think about the significance of the whole BRICS movement. However, I am sorry, I have another thing. I wish you all well, and I will be ready to go next Thursday without a limit.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. See you soon. Michael.
Well, I think that Richard has put his finger on the point that yes, it's a clash, but not so much between socialism and capitalism, because what does capitalism mean? It's really between socialism and finance capitalism, because back in the late 19th century, all of the writers in capitalist economies believed that the trajectory of industrial capitalism was going to be toward a mixed economy, which was, and they all used the word socialism. It meant something different, as we've talked about, to different people. There were many kinds of socialism: anarchist socialism, libertarian socialism, mutual aid socialism, Christian socialism, John Stuart Mill's socialism will tax the landlords. Basically, that's the common denominator of classical economics. And the socialism was expected as part of the dynamic of industrial capitalism itself. That all ended after World War I. And you could look at the SCO and BRICS and the Global South countries. You can look at what's happened in the last week is setting the stage for a resumption of this whole idea of a market economy, a capitalist, a state capitalist economy, a market, a mixed economy, as you have in China, and as Lenin described in his new economic policy of 1921. You need you're always going to need a kind of mixed economy, and you're also going to need a tax system, a tax uniformity among the countries that are doing trade and investment, so that the tax system is based on taxing rent, economic rent, that is unearned income, land rent, monopoly rent, natural resource rent, and financial speculation, by keeping, and there's always going to be some sort of rent because some localities have a better location. There's always going to be a natural monopoly in the form of basic public infrastructure, transportation, communications, healthcare, education. These potential rent extracting sectors are going to be kept in the public domain, capped by finance. And as long as finance is used for, along with the fiscal system, to shape how economies operate, that is going to be what the discussions and arguments and theory of economic development for the next few generations is going to be all about. Well, that's exactly what is not being discussed in the West, but it is being discussed in China and among the countries that we're just meeting in Beijing. So I think we can look at this as setting the stage. On the one hand, the positive lines that Asia is taking and drawing in as many of the global South countries as want to join, even if it means moving away from their vested client oligarchies and their own rentier interests that the West has put in power for all of this. And this is, of course, what the whole American fight against Venezuela is. They tried to have a socialist revolution with America saying, we're going to make socialism so expensive for you in its military overhead, in its sabotage of your economies, that we can then say socialism's a failure because we are able to destroy socialist economies. Well, the BRICS countries, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization have said, you are not going to be able to do to our economies what you have just been doing to Venezuela and what you're threatening to do to Greenland. We are going to isolate ourselves from you. We're not going to fight with you. We will defend ourselves. If you attack us as you're attacking Russia in Ukraine, if you're attacking us because of the path we're taking, then of course there's going to be a fight. We don't want to fight. We just want nothing to do with you. You're a different system. You're late stage barbarism, and we're going our own way. I think that is what is shaping the next generation globally.